The early 20th century marked a turning point in American history, not because the Constitution changed, but because its limits began to be ignored. Under the guise of progress, the federal government expanded far beyond its enumerated powers, beginning with the Progressive Era and accelerating through the New Deal and Great Society. What had once been a system of limited, enumerated authority gave way to a vision of government as national problem solver, redistributor, and regulator. Politicians discovered they could buy votes with other people's money, and courts increasingly deferred to vague notions of the general welfare. The 10th Amendment became more of a footnote than a boundary. Bureaucracies multiplied, entitlements grew, and federal involvement seeped into areas once reserved for states or private life, including education, labor, agriculture, and even the minute details of commerce. What was lost in the process was the very principle that made America different, the presumption of freedom being the default and government the exception. In recent generations, that shift has accelerated, not just in policy, but in philosophy. We see the reverence for rights slowly being replaced by an appetite for entitlements. Increasingly, government is no longer viewed as a threat to liberty, but rather as a substitution for it. This is a dangerous inversion. When people look to the state to solve their problems, they provide overlords with an excuse to expand power. We see this take place in everything from healthcare to automobile regulation. The founders designed a government with limited power, but while that was the plan of the creators, it was not the motivation of the practitioners. The ruling class always wants to amplify their influence, citing reasons of safety, equality, or progress as the rationale. They relentlessly seek to shift the presumption from liberty to control. Each new bureaucracy, each new regulation, and each new entitlement plan slowly changes the question from what individuals may do to what they are allowed to do. Consider how far we've come. In 1791, it was self-evident that freedom of speech meant government could not punish you for your views. Today, unelected agencies regulate what can be said on airwaves and online. In 1789, the federal government had no authority over education, healthcare, or agriculture. Today, it dictates school curricula, creates medical mandates, and regulates farming practices. In 1920, an entire constitutional amendment was required to prohibit alcohol. Today, the government bans products and even shuts down businesses through executive order. The drift from liberty was not inevitable. It was a choice to abandon the principles of limited government, self-responsibility, and individual rights in favor of a politics that sees the state as both parent and savior, and it is a choice that can only be reversed if we reassert what made America unique in the first place. We must not fail to recognize that a government big enough to give you everything you want is also big enough to take everything you have. If we forget that, we may keep the name, the symbols, and the rituals, but the reality will be gone. Liberty was not a footnote to the American story. It was the story. It still can be. We fought for it once. We have to fight for it again. American-style liberty, where individual rights are protected by a written constitution, is one of the rarest achievements in human history. The idea that the state exists to serve the individual rather than the other way around is a radical departure from the norm. While many nations have flirted with freedom, few have institutionalized it, and fewer still have sustained it. It is imperative that we safeguard it vigilantly. For if the flame of liberty is ever extinguished in America, the world becomes a very dark place.
Can you say why America is the greatest country in the world?
Freedom and freedom. So let's keep it that way.
I think that the real job that we have that confronts us is to somehow be able to sell our fellow Americans on the moral superiority of personal liberty.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.